We are going to talk about the evolution of an Indian cricketer business-wise.
What I think that is something that I am very thankful and very grateful for is I got to be a part of his evolution off the field. I, of course, have seen it from close end, and I thought it's a great conversation to help people understand how this took place.
Was that the reason why he made the move to an Adidas?
This is where Nike exercised its very arbitrary option year clause. That was the project that I had worked on when we were part of this CSE Consulting LLP firm with our clients at USPL and Anjan. Jordan brand is the best case study on this, where till today Michael Jordan continues to earn a perpetual royalty from the sale of the Jordan brand that Nike does. And that was the time when we had to present the brand to him at the end of that test series to see if he would like it. That was the reason why the move happened from Adidas to Puma. I think that has been one of the highest ever royalty percentages done ever for any athlete or any team in a while. So that is why in 2013, you saw Virat Kohli playing with the MRF logo on his bat for the first time. That no such offer of 300 crores was made.
Welcome to a special episode on the business of Indian sport. We are going to talk about the evolution of an Indian cricketer business-wise, and we are going to give an insider view for that today. We are going to talk about a cricketer who's very special, and we have Dhruv with us today. Dhruv, who are we talking about?
Well, of course, Virat Kohli, of course, has achieved so much on the field for India. But I think an important aspect of the last 15, 20 years is, as you rightly said, his evolution as a businessman, the evolution of an athlete business, of a professional cricketer business, with a very strong emphasis on his supplementary income and all his businesses off the field.
So we'll get there, but let's go back a little way, and can you explain to us how you started working with him? You've had a long association with him very early on in his career. So can you give us a glimpse into that and how it started? How did you get the opportunity to work with him?
Yeah, so I'm a former employee of the Bangalore IPL franchise, RCB. And that's where, of course, I met him for the first time. And that, again, was a very significant part of his career because he was drafted as an under-19 player in 2008.
Yeah.
But during the phase from 2009 to 2010, it culminated with that very historic retention before the 2011 IPL season. So I had played a role there in terms of his retention with the franchise and getting the final contract executed. What I think that is something that I am very thankful and very grateful for is I got to be a part of his, as you said, evolution off the field, which was very, I would say, important during the time frame of 2011 to 2017.
Okay, so I'll cut you right there. I want to ask you, we are talking about this business evolution of a cricketer. So give us a glimpse about how Virat Kohli's business evolution, non off the field, started. How did he start? What agency was he with? And how your role evolved with him?
So, look, initially, Virat Kohli burst onto the scene with that Under-19 World Cup in 2008. And that was the time when a lot of people noticed cricketers using a Nike logo on their cricket bat.
Yes.
So Virat Kohli, along with a lot of other young cricketers, were represented by a Bangalore-based agency called Games Unlimited. Atul Srivastav had represented a lot of these cricketers, and Nike was their first sponsorship. Now, what gets really interesting here, Akhil, is that there's always been a narrative that Virat is probably one cricketer who's had very prominent associations with the big three sports brands, with Nike to Adidas to Puma. But what gets lost in a lot of, I would say, media space and in a lot of sports business conversations is how this happened, what were the nuances behind it. And I, of course, have seen it from close end. And I thought it's a great conversation to help people understand how this took place.
Right. So how did this take place? Let's start with, he was with Nike, like you said, at the early part of his career.
Yes.
So how did the move transition? At that time of his career, what were the kind of endorsements that he was having? And what was the kind of business that he was doing? Did he have any kind of sweat equity deals at that time?
Yeah. So I think, look, we're starting in a very initial phase. So we're talking about 2008 to about 2013. Which was that 5-year term of his initial Nike contract.
Right.
Now, at the time, we're obviously in the phase of traditional endorsements, where cricketers would endorse a sports brand, they'd endorse a consumer brand, and just get their transactional endorsement fee. the industry hadn't evolved very much at that stage into licensing and to royalty and to equity. That happened much later.
In India.
In India, of
Yeah.
course, yeah. But I think that from that, also you got to remember, Akhil, that was the time when the IPL was just starting.
Yes.
So we were seeing cricketers in a very different light. Prior to that, we just saw them playing for India. But then the IPL phase changed everything. So that phase was when you saw Virat Kohli's growth as a 50-over player. He bulldozed his way into that 2011 World Cup squad just because he had gone through a phase where he was getting back-to-back ODI hundreds. And as I said earlier, it was the time between 2010 and 2011 when the IPL retention happened, the first set of retentions before, I think the auction in 2011 was around the same time as the 2011 50-over World Cup. So that was again a very interesting phase. So the Nike association was coming to an end.
In 2013.
Yeah, 5 years were done. And Nike had this very interesting clause in their contract called an option year, where you could sign a cricketer for 5 years. Just to give you rough numbers, if you signed a cricketer on, say, a 25 lakh contract, paying the cricketer 5 lakhs a year. Now, let's say when you're about to end the 5th year, a cricketer is not going to have the same brand value, the same monetizable value, and his performance can be very different in year 1 compared to year 5. With Virat Kohli, it's the perfect example. 2008, 2009, under 19 World Cup winner, broke into the Indian ODI team. But as we came to 2011, 2012, he started getting ODI hundreds. He was a 50-over World Cup winner. He got that Test 100 in Australia in the 2011-12 series. So as we entered 2013, where again he was getting ODI hundreds by the plenty,
Yeah.
of course, his value is not the same as what it was in 2008.
Right.
And this is where Nike exercised its very arbitrary option year clause.
So what exactly did that, how did that transpire? What exactly did that happen? And did that actually, was that the reason why he made the move to an Adidas?
Yeah, so he was unhappy with the servicing. He was unhappy with some of the products that were given to him. And also, Akhil, you got to remember, at the time, Nike had a large roster of Indian cricketers, that they would sponsor. And we know this, servicing professional cricketers, servicing professional athletes is a very difficult job. But anyway, from his point of view, he was looking to not continue with them because he wasn't happy with the servicing. But I guess he probably didn't know that the nuances of his contract gave Nike all the authority and the power to arbitrarily extend their contract for a year. And this was not signed by his agent at the time. It was his former agent and agency, Atul Srivastav of Games Unlimited. That's a very important distinction because Games Unlimited had done this deal between Nike and him that was coming to an end in 2013.
Right.
He had obviously a little, I think a year prior, changed agencies to Cornerstone, where Bunty Sachdev was his agent. So he had to then negotiate the new deal.
Right.
And that is where the conversations probably did not reach an agreeable amount. And that is one reason why Nike decided to exercise the arbitrary clause. Now, why this is interesting is because, as I said, I will not get into a specific number. However, in 2013, assuming he was paid X amount of money, he's not going to sign for that same amount of money in the next year because, of course, his value as a cricketer, his status as a cricketer had gone up so much. But Nike were continuing to pay him that same amount of money for year 6 of the contract because they had used this option year clause.
Right. So that's when the shift happened. And
Yes.
The shift happened to a rival brand, Adidas.
Yeah.
And it was still a model where he was still earning an endorsement fee for that, correct?
It was a pure endorsement. Adidas were very keen to sign him. So Adidas said, we are going to even help you with your legal issues with Nike. Because the moment he signed the deal with Adidas, Nike went to the courts in Bangalore and Karnataka and filed the case against him, saying that he's still our athlete. Look, please understand, the 5-year contract is done, but Nike had an option year which said, we can extend you for the 6th year. He did not want to continue with them. So they exercised the clause and they went to court and said, he's breached his contract because he is, still our athlete and he has signed with a rival brand.
Okay. So then the move to Adidas happened. At that
Yes.
time, he was still expanding his portfolio.
Yes.
There was obviously the bat sticker
The
transition
bat
would have
sticker is
happened
a
by
separate
then.
category.
But that the
Yes.
transition into an MRF would have happened by
It
then.
did,
There
because
were
when
other
he was with
deals.
Nike, it was his entire category of the bat
Yeah.
sticker, the soft leather, and the shoes,
Footwear.
which is pads, gloves, footwear, and the bat sticker. But why the Adidas Association also became interesting is because Adidas were only taking the categories of footwear
Apparel.
and apparel. The bat sticker then moved to MRF, as a lot of people are aware.
So then that means an extended commercial opportunity also, right?
Of
Because the
course.
bat sticker is such a heavy visibility for
Yes.
any big cricketer
Yes.
that it offers a great commercial opportunity.
Correct. And you could monetize both separately.
Yeah.
So that is why in 2013, you saw Virat Kohli playing with the MRF logo on his bat for the first time. And of course, he was already being touted as the next Sachin Tendulkar at the time. So then seeing the MRF logo on the bat, being with a new brand like Adidas, was something that was phenomenal. And I think that, Adidas had used him really, really well. The case was going on in the background. However, he was successful with that case because he had made a case in the court that he doesn't have to he cannot be forced to sign a 6th year. Nike argued that he had already agreed to the clause. Look, the contract, as I said, was done back 5 years prior when he had a different agent and a different agency.
Yeah.
However, he won the case. So that is again a lot of things that people have not understood, is that he was successful
Right.
in that.
Okay, fantastic. So we've spoken about Adidas.
Yeah.
Then another big move happened in his career,
Yes.
where he moved to another rival, another sportswear brand, Puma.
Yeah.
This was a different kind of a deal.
Yes.
And at this stage of his career, you were working very closely with him,
Yes,
right?
yeah,
2013, 2014.
Correct, yeah.
You were working very closely with him, directly with him, and you were
Yes.
overseeing all these deals that were happening.
Yes.
So take us through this process one by one, saying that how did the Puma deal materialize?
Yep.
And how did the licensing model, which has become like a case study model for a lot of cases in India, it's become a good case study model. So explain that to us.
Yep.
And tell us how he evolved into the model of then just being an endorsing a product or a brand. How he moved on to having a licensing model or
Royalty.
a royalty model for a brand.
So there's a bit of a backstory to it. I quit my job at RCB in 2011. I'd moved out after IPL 2011, and then I had tried to work on my own, tried to represent cricketers and other athletes on my own. However, in 2014, I had met his agent at the time, who I knew in a previous job, because Bunty and myself were colleagues at Globosport many years prior. This is before he had formed his own agency, Cornerstone, and he had represented other cricketers like Yuvraj Singh and later Virat Kohli. So I had gone to his agent and said that, I'm very keen to work with Virat, because I'd already worked with him on the primary on-field income side while I was at RCB, and I was very keen to get involved in his off-field business from a licensing capacity. And I was very keen to look at co-branded businesses, to look at licensing royalty. That was, the expertise that I wanted to bring to the table. And credit to his agent, Bunty, who was very gracious, very kind, because he did not have to, allow me into the business circle. But he said that, no, I think that, you have some interesting ideas. Let's find a way to work together. And that led to the formation of CSC Consulting LLP, which was a licensing LLP that was set up with Bunty, myself, and another partner, Jogesh.
Right.
So while Cornerstone was the company that was already doing Virat's transactional brand endorsements, the traditional brand endorsements, we formed CSC Consulting LLP as a pure licensing company. That was set up in 2014.
Right.
So that's how I had come into the picture. And at the time, Bunty had introduced me to Miss Anjana Reddy in Bangalore, who ran a company in Bangalore called USPL, Universal Sports Private Limited, that used to have a memorabilia business called Collectabilia. You remember they had... Yes, Sachin Tendulkar was an early investor in her company.
Yeah.
And she had done quite a lot of work around Sachin Tendulkar's 200 test match. You remember those Coke cans with all Sachin's 100 and basically they did memorabilia with a lot of sportsmen. So that was her pure business model. And USPL already had a venture capitalist as an investor in Axel Partners.
Right.
So I met Anjana at the time, And she was pivoting in her business. So she was moving from the memorabilia business to celebrity back licensing brands. That is where she was very keen to start a new brand in the clothing sector with Virat Kohli.
This is wrong.
Yeah. Like we spoke about from the move from Nike to Adidas, the categories were split. You could monetize your bat sticker separately with an MRF. You could sign with an Adidas for your sports apparel and your footwear. But what was interesting, Akhil, is that there was a separate category for casual wear. Now, you remember during that phase, Virat Kohli used to endorse Flying Machine,
The
which was a pure casual wear brand, casual t-shirts and denim. And that contract was coming to an end. So the thought process then became that Anjana Reddy in her company USPL wanted to create a brand around Virat Kohli in the casual wear and the denim sector, all the categories that Adidas had not blocked.
Right.
Because remember, we're talking 2013-14 where Virat is already endorsing Adidas in certain categories. The categories of apparel that were not blocked in his Adidas contract were being monetized.
So no
instead
conflict.
Of course, so instead of him, say, renewing an apparel and a transactional endorsement contract with Flying Machine, he would build a new brand with USPL in Bangalore, Anjana Reddy's company. And that's where I came in, because the LLP we had formed, CSC Consulting LLP, it was our mandate to look after licensing royalty businesses for Virat.
Right.
So Anjana and I worked very closely on this because I was based in Bangalore. She explained what the business idea she had is that we are going to basically create this brand called, say, brand X, and instead of Virat getting a transactional endorsement fee, so let's say he's paid, say, 1 crore rupees as an endorsement contract from Flying Machine. I'm just giving you a rough number. Instead of getting a endorsement fee, you get royalty. And that became the premise of how we arrived at brand WROGN.
Okay, so that was the formation of the brand WROGN, which had become so popular. Tell us more about how was Virat interested into all of this? What was his reaction? Because this is it's like cusp of a transition in Indian sports marketing, where cricketers or sports persons are evolving from a model of just being an
Brand
endorser,
ambassadors, yeah.
brand ambassador.
Yeah.
They're evolving into being business owners or controlling their own brand.
Yeah.
Similar to
royalty.
how
royalty.
Michael Jordan did with his own brand.
Look, the Jordan brand is the best case study on
Correct.
this, where till today Michael Jordan continues to earn a perpetual royalty from the sale of the Jordan brand that Nike does. Now, what we were trying to do with WROGN, and see, listen, we're still looking in 2013-14 where nobody knew if something like this would be successful. We had already closed the deal and signed a contract, but we didn't know what the brand was going to be called because Virat had to get a final approval on that.
Right.
Now, it's hard. It's a very interesting phase because Virat just seems to have had such a phenomenal career over the last 10-15 years. But the 2014 Test series in England was one phase where it hadn't gone very well on the field for him. You remember that series where he'd not scored a lot of runs, and that was the time when we had to present the brand to him at the end of that Test series to see if he would like it. So
Right.
at the time, I had flown to London at the end of that 2014 Test series in England with a gentleman called Vijay. He was the CEO of USPL. He used to work for Anjana. Anjana was unable to make that trip to London because she had fallen ill at the time. So it was me and this CEO in her company, Vijay, who had gone to present this idea to him. Now, Virat was aware of what we were trying to do, but he had to approve the brand name of WROGN. And that was the first time at the end of that Test series where he had seen the presentation on WROGN, why we are calling it WROGN. The thought process on WROGN was that be a breakaway, do things your own way. And Virat represented that in every way. And the idea was that instead of him getting a flat endorsement fee, WROGN would make product categories in t-shirts, shirts, etc. He would get a royalty.
Skin in the game.
Royalty, yeah. And where this gets very exciting is that, take a guess on how much royalty he would earn percentage-wise. 12.5%. And that became, I think that has been one of the highest ever royalty percentages done ever for any athlete or any team in a while. And yeah, there were some very hard negotiations with Anjana on reaching the 12.5%. But yeah, it ended up being a crazy royalty percentage when you look at it, because at the time it doesn't look big.
Yeah,
But
because it's just a start. You never know how much it's going to
exactly.
sell.
But then ultimately in year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, if you had to say brand wrong did 100 crores in sales, Virat would earn 12.5 crores if you just calculated the 12.5% royalty. So
Right.
that made it a crazy deal. And that obviously became the premise of his licensing association. And that was the project that I had worked on when we were part of this CSE Consulting LLP firm with our clients at USPL and Anjana Reddy.
Nice. So this was probably one of the first deals that a cricketer did in the licensing space.
Licensing and royalty
A lot
space,
of cricketers
yes.
have tried this model in the future.
And that became the premise also for his 1/8 brand, which was something. I mean, I was not very involved at that stage because we were thinking that okay, Wrong has kicked off well, but we are also going to create Virat's own license, his own brand name, and I'd worked on the early stage presentation. However, the name 1/8 wasn't ready. In 2016 is when Virat ended his Adidas contract and went to Puma. And 1/8 was, as a brand name, was born when that association with Puma started, to answer your initial question.
Okay, so the licensing model has been established. Then the move happened to another sportswear brand, Puma, like we mentioned. And what happened? How did that evolve? How did that phase from Adidas to Puma evolve? And why did that move happen?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question and a great part of the conversation, because at the time, there's a big narrative that why is Virat Kohli jumping Nike to Adidas and now Puma, but the business case studies behind it are very different, and the nuances behind it. Nike, of course, he may or may not have wanted to continue. There was an arbitrary option year clause. He didn't want to work with the brand, so he moved to Adidas. However, now in Adidas, we're talking around the 2016-17 year period. He has got a taste of licensing royalty, this 12.5% royalty that he was earning from brand Wrong and USPL. But he had then gone through his representatives to Adidas and said, we'd now like to do a licensing deal with Adidas. And globally, brands do that with a lot of athletes where they would create a logo, they would create a
Their
sneaker
own
line,
line.
and they'd end up getting royalty.
Yeah.
Now, Adidas at the time were not keen to do it. So obviously, it became a non-starter. The Adidas contract was ending in 2016. It just ended a natural progression because Adidas were not keen to do a licensing royalty deal, which Puma and the Puma MD at the time was keen to do. So Puma, so basically Virat's representatives, I had moved out of Virat's system. Just to be totally clear, I had already moved out. So I wasn't part of the decisions or the discussions at the time. However, because of course I know all the people who were involved, they went to Puma, and Puma told Virat Kohli that don't worry, we will help you create this brand, and that led to the creation of 1/8. So the name 1/8, the logo 1/8 was all created by Puma. However, Puma did not own it. They just said we will help you create this license, and Virat, of course, earned money. Media reports said 100 crores, and again, those were just highly inflated numbers. However, there was again a minimum guarantee and a licensing association. But Virat, on every product that Puma put the 1/8 logo, 1/8 on a sneaker, 1/8 on a t-shirt,
He
earned a
royalty.
12% royalty. So he was at the time earning 12.5% from USPL on the brand Wrong, and every 1/8 brand that Puma were making, he was earning 12% royalty. So that, of course, was how 1/8 was born. And then 1/8, of course, Virat licensed into other categories, but I'll talk about. But that was the reason why the move happened from Adidas to Puma. There was a licensing successful deal that had happened, which obviously would have given him the confidence and his representatives that let's try this with a sports brand, which is a global best practice. And Puma were very keen to do it.
Right. Getting back to licensing and this 1/8 brand that you mentioned. So what happens? Who owns that brand 1/8? How does the athlete own the brand?
Yeah. Yeah. So that again is a very good question and a great clear distinction between Wrong and between 1/8. So the logo Wrong, the brand Wrong, and the trademark of Wrong was all owned by the company USPL, Anjana Reddy's company USPL. So Virat just had a licensing association with them that I will earn 12.5% royalty on every product you sell. 1/8 was his own brand, although Puma and the Puma team at the time in 2016-17 helped create the logo for him. The brand was to always be owned by Virat. So it was his own license, like Ronaldo's CR7, to explain it perfectly, where he could take 1/8, a licensee licensor association, where Puma have taken a license in a certain category and they paid him a 12% royalty on that. He could then give the 1/8 license to Lux, which made vests. That was another licensing category. So that was the primary difference. 1/8 was Virat's own personal brand and license, where he would license it out to various categories.
It could be perfumes, it could be restaurants.
He had deodorants. You remember here there was deodorants at the time. There was of course the 1/8 commune, but in the pure licensing deals, of course, Puma was that category. He had done formal footwear with his with some people in Delhi. I think his brother Virat Kohli was involved with that as well, where he had the 1/8 logo and formal shoes. So there were a lot of these different categories, but where it got interesting is that license was trademarked by the former company that I was part of, CSC Consulting LLP.
It was trademarked by
Yes,
CSC.
yes. So the initial trademarks that were registered for 1/8 were registered by CSC Consulting LLP. They owned the trademark, and because we had as I said, I mean, when we had formed that company, that was to do licensing businesses for
Right.
Virat. Then, of course, obviously, we would meet various categories. I, again, as I said, had moved out by then because after the WROGN deal was done, I had come out of that company in 2016. But that was the premise of how the licensing model worked.
Just explain to us, Dhruv, a licensing deal with a WROGN, how does it differ from a licensing deal with Puma? Isn't that like a similar category?
Yeah. No, so that again, you have to look at it from the premise of the category segregations that were already existing in his endorsement contracts. As I said, when he signed an endorsement contract with Adidas 2013, 2014, he already had the category of casual wear and denim separate, where he was a brand ambassador for Flying Machine. When the Flying Machine endorsement contract ended is when we did the licensing deal with USPL for WROGN. Now with Puma, the sportswear category was always separate. So when he was moving from Adidas to Puma, the license categories of 1/8 were only on sportswear,
Right.
training wear, and casual t-shirts were kept separate. It's a very good question that it's a very similar category, but you'll have to ask his lawyers and his representatives at the time and on how they successfully managed that, because
Right.
the lines are very blurred between sports style and athleisure, and now, I mean, the category almost seems it's merged into one, but that is how they had kind of
Right.
done that.
Got it. So now we'll move on to another different thing. Before we move on to Virat's journey into sportswear, apparel, or footwear, there's another interesting category that he delved into during this phase between 2015 to 2017, I think. He had ownership into some football teams. So how did that materialize, and what was the thinking behind getting equity in these kind of
Yeah.
companies or teams?
Yeah. No, and I think, look, this is the brilliance of a lot of things Virat Kohli has done off the field for many, many years, is that, when you talk about the evolution of an athlete's business, you always move from traditional brand endorsement, where you just get an endorsement fee, to licensing and royalty, where you get a percentage of sales. And then you finally end up moving into equity deals and investments. And what was phenomenal is that with Virat Kohli, you can say he has successfully had business deals and associations in every single category. He's had, as you said, traditional endorsements and transactional endorsements with a number of consumer brands. He's had a successful licensing royalty deal with USPL for WROGN, 1/8 with Puma, 1/8 with Lux for his vests, 1/8 with deodorants. And then the first investment deal he did was with FC Goa. And
The ISL team.
yeah. So, and what's very interesting, and again, at the time, there were other cricketers, there were other celebrities who were associated with these ISL teams.
Yes.
But Virat was the only one who actually invested his own money to buy equity. So he has paid for the shares that he owns in FC Goa. And that became how he was very different. And he then, of course, has taken that to another level over the years, where he's invested his own capital into a number of businesses. Some have gone public, like Digit Insurance, all the way till now. It's very exciting that, if you had to do a business case study on him, you can almost, look at it seamlessly from endorsement to licensing to equity investment. And that's what makes the whole premise really interesting.
Moving on to the next phase of Virat's business career, the World Cup 2023 final, there was a big news after that where he actually moved his business commercial partners again.
Yeah.
So what happens to that 1/8 license? How does that move with him?
Yeah.
Where does he take that? And we'll talk a lot about the next big move that he's made in his business career.
Correct.
But just
Correct.
explain to us that what happens after the World Cup.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, that's out in the media and there's public news about it. That I think that's probably when we've read articles about intellectual property ownership and who owned certain trademarks and licenses. And look, if you just do a historical search on any trademarks filed in India, everyone does know that the original trademark was registered by CSE Consulting LLP for the 1/8 brand. Now, Virat at the time, of course, parted ways with his long-term agent Bunty Sachdev at the time, and he moved to a new company, Sporting Beyond, which was run by Jaiveer and Ravi Shastri. Jaiveer had worked with Virat Kohli prior on some previous endorsements. Of course, he had a very good relationship with Ravi Shastri, but that was one issue that had taken place. And a lot of people said, what happens to this 1/8 license now?
Right.
So if you look at the 1/8 trademark now, it's registered under a new entity. I know I can't pronounce this very well. It's DICIOTTO Sports Private Limited, which is a company run by Virat Kohli and Anushka Sharma, and they seem to now have the registered trademark for 1/8. So to answer your question, I'm guessing that the trademark registration might have moved from CSE Consulting LLP
Right.
to this particular entity. So that has, of course, led to new licensing associations and business associations, which we're reading about in the present day.
Right. And that's got a lot of news, right, in the recent last couple of months,
Yeah.
where there's been a media report of Virat having moved now. He's moved from Puma,
Yes.
which he's been with for a long period of time.
Last,
He's
I think,
moved.
yeah, last 7 to 8 years of
And
that association.
So he's moved on from Puma, and there were a
Yes.
lot of media reports. He's gone, and now he started his own footwear label with some successful partners.
Yes.
So
Yes.
how does that work now?
Yeah.
How did that work?
Yeah, so now that again is an interesting case study to look at. Now, a lot of people have asked me the question that over this 7 to 8 year period, if the 1/8 line with Puma was very successful, why did Puma not continue it?
Yeah.
And of course, we've seen media reports over the last 4 to 5 years where they've spoken about how the 1/8 line was contributing a lot to Puma's overall sales in India. However, a lot of people have read that the managing director at Puma at the time moved out of the company and he set up Agilitas. He had obviously built a very close business equation with Virat over the years, and that was one of the reasons that Virat decided to move and take the 1/8 brand and 1/8 license with him.
Right.
Now, it's not too, I would say, unreal a process, because there are global case studies on this. I mean, the recent news that we've been reading about Steph Curry, where he had a lifelong royalty deal with Under Armour,
Yeah.
where they helped him co-create the Curry brand logo, but now he's realized it doesn't work and he wants to do something outside. Roger Federer had a long-term deal with Nike with his RF logo, but then he realized that he didn't want to continue, or Nike didn't want to continue with him. He's gone and invested in another company, which is On Running. So
yeah.
that is the reason why Virat has moved out. Now, there's been a lot of media reports about how he was given a 300 crore offer, which he turned down to go on his own. Now, I have this on, of course, good authority, because I've spoken to people in the company who said that no such offer was made. So I have this from a lot of the people who were in the top management at the company, that they were not even in discussions because Virat was not keen to engage in discussions on renewal.
Right.
So when you ask the question, why did he move out of Puma? Two reasons. One, it's completely fine. Everyone has a right to do business with who they want to. It's a free market at the end of the day. So he must have seen that 1/8 as a license is doing well. Why don't I take it and work on my own? But number two, did Puma make him an offer he couldn't refuse with 300 crores? No, because I have spoken, as I said, on good authority to people, and they have permitted me to even say that no such offer of 300 crores was made.
Right. So now he's invested in Agilitas. He's a
Yes.
co-owner in that company.
Yes.
And he's also going to be promoting, I'm sure he's going to be
Yeah,
promoting the
I
One Eight
mean, it's
brand.
premature because we don't know. I mean, look, I have as much information on that as you do, that he's now looking to invest in this company.
Well, there have been media reports that he's
Yeah,
invested a figure.
invested, and they're gonna now have 1/8 relaunching in a new avatar. I mean, I've seen some new Instagram posts on how the 1/8 logo has now completely changed.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see that is 1/8 now going to evolve into different categories of licensing. Is that new 1/8 logo now going to extend to 1/8 Commune, his bar? Is he going to continue doing multiple categories with 1/8, or is everything going to be under Agilitas, where he's now invested money, he's a shareholder? It's premature, and time will tell. But I think that it's exciting to note that it's another chapter in the evolution of his business. Look, everyone talks about his greatness as what he's achieved on the field, but to see these different levels of business are fascinating. And a lot of us in the industry who've had an opportunity to work with him over the past 15-20 years at different stages, as you said, he's moved business advisors, he's moved agencies, moved agents, moved various brands. But rather than looking at it as him moving, I look at it as an evolution into different levels of business.
Of course.
So that's something that I find very exciting.
So we've spoken a lot about Virat's business evolution, but this licensing model, this equity model, was tried by a lot of other cricketers also, right?
Yeah.
And so how did it fare for them?
No, that's a great question, Akhil. And the best way I explain this to people is that not every athlete is going to be successful in a long-term licensing deal, a long-term royalty deal. If you look at Nike, they only have 4 athletes who are on lifelong royalty deals or lifelong endorsement contracts. Michael Jordan, of course, with the Jordan brand, LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and Cristiano Ronaldo. Steph Curry had a lifelong royalty deal with Under Armour, but that we've seen very recently has not worked, and he wants to do something. We mentioned Roger Federer, where he wanted to come out of Nike and go and invest in another business. So in India, it is going to take a while for this business to be successful across 20 different cricketers or 30 different cricketers. Yes, cricketers have tried, it hasn't worked. There's nothing wrong with that, because we're still in a very evolving stage of Indian athlete business and Indian sports business, and which is why Virat Kohli, as the cream of the cream with exceptional on-field and off-field performance, has managed to successfully bring this across, which is why whether he did a royalty licensing deal with WROGN, it was a success. That made him try his 1/8 logo. It was fairly successful with Puma, and now he's confident to go and take that to a new business house like Agilitas and take it to another level altogether. So it isn't easy for every athlete or every cricketer to do, and I think that sums it up perfectly, that with this evolution that we've seen with Virat Kohli, from endorsement to licensing to equity investment, in the next 4 or 5 years, I'm sure we'll see more with other Indian cricketers going forward.
Right. Okay, so we've tried to put together this case study of how a cricketer's business life evolves, and using a case study of Virat Kohli here.
Yes.
If you'd like to have more case studies and like to know more about how these business practices work, do write to us and we'll be happy to have a chat and like get more information out to you.
Yeah, and continue to watch us on the business of Indian sport. I hope this Virat Kohli business journey was exciting. And if there are any athletes, global or in India, or any particular areas that you'd like us to deep dive into, we'll make sure you keep coming back for more. And continue to like our content, subscribe to the channel, and we'll make sure we have you coming back for more.